needs this one more, Jason?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Clemson. You know, they coming off of that loss to Ohio State, coming off of that loss to LSU. Those are two lopsided losses in a row in the playoff. You lose a third one to a big opponent like Georgia. You know, that's going to be bad, especially from a perception standpoint. People are going to start piling on, you know, what's happened to Dabo Swinney's program, what's happened to the Tigers. I think Clemson needs this game. I mean, honestly, both teams need it, but I think Clemson needs it a little bit more, you know, from that kind of perspective. They just can't take another loss on the big stage. That'd be the third straight loss to an SEC team, you know. And that's just not something that's going to be easy to overcome. They'd have to hear that the rest of the season, you know, the weakness of their schedule, people would pile on that. I just don't think Clemson can afford to lose this game from a perception standpoint.
I agree 100%. One of the things that I've talked about over the past, since the Ohio State game, was I said, you know, if you want to talk about getting beat by an LSU team who had all-world talent, and just pause for 30 seconds, guys. I have to trash talk LSU for just a moment. It's a public service announcement. I told you that when you lost all that talent, you were going to suck, didn't I? I told you when your team couldn't even hold down the janitor that cleaned y'all's toilets that year. I told y'all were going to suck, and you ended up sucking. But back to it. You could come back and you could say that they lost to an all-world LSU team, and they did. All right. I'm not one for making excuses, but you can understand it. Ohio State came out and point blank said, our number one goal. I even had Ohio State fans tell me this verbatim on my channel. We did not care near about the national championship as much as we wanted to finally beat y'all. We were sick of last year. We're sick of 31-0. We're sick that we've never beat you guys. We're tired of it. And, man, they came out and they did it. Of course, they followed that up by getting embarrassed by Alabama and proving that the only game they really cared about was us. So I agree with you 100%. If we don't, and I say we because I pull for them and so on, but I know I'm not on the field. If Clemson cannot win this game, and especially if Georgia for some reason should come out and win, in a dominating performance, we do have problems at Clemson. And there's the other side of the coin, it's kind of the schizophrenic side, Jason, and I'm thinking about West Virginia losing 70-33. That was one of the greatest things that ever happened to Clemson because we got Venables in, things started, turning, changing, blah, blah, blah. But this is a big game for Clemson. Georgia can lose this game and still be a contender. Clemson can lose this game, and I'm not so sure about that, no matter how well they play the rest of the season. So Clemson has to win this ball game. And if you look at the players they have, if you look at the players that Georgia's missing, like Pickens, I mean, that's a big deal. That's massive. And the injuries, Clemson should win this ball game. They should win this ball game. So if they don't, I think that they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out what is – and to me, it's a culture issue.
Yeah, I guess I'll go at it now, and I'm going to go back on what Brian just said about, the fact that Clemson can lose this, the Georgia can lose this game, and they've still got, a chance to be competitive because you look down the line that, they should beat pretty much everyone else on their schedule. I think the only competition there would probably be Florida, and you win that game, you're the SEC East champion. You've got a chance to go into Atlanta and probably play an Alabama team. And if it's not Alabama, it's going to be someone else that's very highly rated and probably playoff bound. And you've got a playoff, essentially quarterfinal game there, a chance to play your way into the college football playoff and into that Final Four. So I do agree that Clemson probably needs this more from that perspective, that there's not another marquee game on the schedule that Clemson can fall back on and say, hey, we improved. We didn't beat Georgia, but look at it the way we finished the season, and we beat Virginia, North Carolina, Duke. I mean, there's some good teams, but there's not the same caliber of teams after Clemson in the ACC that the SEC has, outside of Georgia with Florida and Alabama and Texas A&M and potentially LSU. So I do agree with that. I will say, kind of going back to what you were saying about losing some of these games, a history of doing it, whether it was the LSU game a couple of years ago, the Ohio State game last year. Georgia's got that too. And it has certainly, even more so than Clemson, has had the difficulty of winning the big game. And I think you go back to that 2017 season, 2018 national championship game. Georgia hasn't won a huge game since then. I mean, the Rose Bowl, the 2018 Rose Bowl game against Oklahoma was a huge win. But then since then, you lost to Alabama in the national championship game. The next year, you lose to LSU on the road in a marquee matchup on CBS. And then you get another chance at proving yourself against Alabama to the same setting, 2018 SEC championship game. The wheels come off there in the second half, and Georgia loses that one. They drop a game against South Carolina in 2019 that they probably shouldn't have. That a team that's elite does not drop, and then they get another chance to prove themselves in that 2019 SEC championship game, and they get run out of the building by LSU. They lose the bowl game in there to Texas. They won two New Year's Six bowl games over Baylor in the Sugar Bowl and over Cincinnati in the Peach Bowl. But I don't think that, for Georgia fans, I don't think that those two wins sit nearly as well as a win over Alabama, a win over LSU in one of those settings. And so I think Georgia needs this win from that perspective. Like I said, they've got opportunities. They've got the schedule that sets up well for them, where they can lose this game and still have a chance to make the playoff. But just from a fan's perspective, from a I guess kind of the vibe around the program, if Georgia loses this game, that's another big game loss that Kirby Smart has on his record and on his resume, and that's just something that the Georgia fans would really like to avoid here. And there's no better way to start your season than winning a game, and it can potentially be even bigger when you beat a top 5 team like Clemson. And so I think from that perspective, Georgia really needs this game.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. I mean, Kirby Smart, he needs a big win too, no doubt about it. I think both of these teams need this win. I mean, it's really I guess it's just how you look at it. Both of these teams need this game, and they need it badly. And
that's what makes it so great.
Yeah, and I'm not just talking about a playoff from the playoff perspective, because I don't think either team's knocked out of the playoff with a loss by any stretch. They may not control their own destiny, but I mean, both teams could go on to run the table and get in. A one-loss SEC champ's surely not getting left out. A one-loss ACC champ's never been left out. So, I mean, I'm not even really talking about from a playoff perspective. I'm just talking about from perceptions. But, yeah, you make the very valid points. But both these teams need this game very badly. And like you say, that's part of what makes it, such a big game.
Yeah, I see the debate going either way in regards to who needs the game more, because on the Clemson side, if you're going to say Clemson needs this game more, from the standpoint that, you both had made the point that Clemson is just not going to see an opponent unless things change radically and somebody jumps up as to be somebody we don't expect them to be. The Clemson, I don't believe that they've got another ranked opponent on the schedule, on the regular season schedule. No, they get to the ACC championship game. They're gonna hope, if they lose this game to Georgia, number one, the loser has to lose close. They have to be impressive. If this is a classic 38-35 game, then the committee's going to look at that and be like, if Georgia loses 38-35, Clemson goes on to beat Clemson, and they're sitting there at the end of the year 13-0, and they're number 1 or 2 in the country. They're not going to knock Georgia to 8. They're going to say, this is still one of the top 4 teams in the country. The 2 of the top 4 teams in the country just happen to play each other. So we're not going to penalize the loser because they showed that they can stand toe-to-toe. On the other hand, if it's 38-14, then that becomes a problem. Now, again, on the Clemson side, if they lose, the counter argument to that they don't have ground, they don't have the opponent to make up for that, but they also don't have the opponent in their way. So as long as they go undefeated in the ACC, win the conference championship game, they're sitting there at 13-1, and they lost a close game to Georgia, they should be in good shape. Georgia, on the other hand, has the issue of whoever comes out of the West, and most likely Alabama, of they lose to Clemson, and even if it's a quote-unquote good loss or impressive loss, if they don't win the conference championship game, then, maybe we're all sitting here saying Georgia's one of the best 4 teams in the country, but they just couldn't get picked because there are a bunch of one-loss conference champions. So by the way it's supposed to be done, looking at conference championships and looking at records, Georgia got left out. But, man, they lost to Alabama by a field goal. They lost to Clemson by a field goal. Man, they kind of got screwed, but that's the way it happened. And certainly if Georgia wins this game, runs the SEC table, and then loses in decent fashion to Alabama, I still think they're going to be in good shape as a one-loss SEC runner-up that most likely lost to the best team in the country. I just think as long as it's a close game, neither one's in bad shape.